A crosstab query performs a summary calculation of intersecting values of row and column headings, which are chosen by the user, just like an Excel spreadsheet database. Where in the Excel spreadsheet, we can set up our row headers and column headers and our values that represent or intersect between those two headings, but the operative word in the crosstab query is that we want to summarize, just as we went over in the previous training video about criteria groups. You know, how you want to be able to group the fields together and summarize those fields that contain values? Well, that's one way you can summarize. The crosstab query is another. For example, in my query here, the Q1 sales, which by the way, you can base your crosstab query upon another query or a table. And here I got my transaction date with its criteria set up to include only those products that were purchased in the first quarter of 2008. So I want to be able to create a crosstab query that will summarize all those products by month, because here it's separated out by transaction date. So if I come up here and I sort my products, let me click on the drop down arrow and go A to Z, see if this makes sense. When I do my crosstab query on this query, I'll have my row headers as the category and products, and my column header as the date. And then the value between those two is the sale. And I want to be able to set the date up to group it by month. So all the same products purchased in a month will be displayed in that month. So let's take a look right here. We've got the product air mattress in January, and that's the only one in this group that is purchased in January, so we just get one total there. But in February, hooey, look at all these. We got lots of them in February. So in the crosstab query, it will take a summary of all those same products in February sold and add them all up and give me one total. So for the month of February, it would be, well, that one plus that one plus, not that one, skip that one, that one's January, February, and add all those up and give me a total. So let's go ahead and do this. Well, we can close out of here, and yeah, we'll save it. And then come up here, click on the Create tab, go to the Queries group, let's do the wizard. Now the wizard's going to ask us a bunch of questions, and based upon our answers, we'll get our crosstab. Okay, first we have to select it. Let's go ahead and select it here, updates it over here, and it says the wizard creates a crosstab query that displays data in a compact spreadsheet-like format. And there's a sample of it. So the darker orange for the columns are your column labels, and for the rows are for the row labels. And so like I said, I want to be able to have my category and products for my row labels. And then for the column, I want to be able to group it by date, and then the intersecting value for that will be the sales. So with it selected here, crosstab query wizard, let's click Okie dokie. And then which table or query contains the fields you want for the crosstab query results? Well, it's not a table, it's a query. And it's right there. Go ahead and select it, click Next, but how very ordinary. Let's go ahead and go back. Instead, since you're already up here, instead of just selecting it, double click, and not only does it select it, but it advances over to the next step. Oh, that's so efficient. And then you can see which field values do you want as your row headings. Remember, I wanted both the category double click and the product. So you can see down below, each product is tied to a category, so that looks like it's going to work out just dandy. Click Next. And then which field values do you want as your column headings? Do you want it the sales or the date? How about a date? Well, not with you. I want to go ahead and double click on it to be able to choose the interval that I want to be able to group it by, and I want it by month. So it updates it down below, gives us a preview. So instead of all these different transaction dates, it's going to group everything that we sold for one product if we sold any in January and then February and March. Let's go ahead and click Next. And it says, what number do you want calculated for each column and row intersection? Well, there's the sale field, and what do you want to do? As a function, I want to add them all up. Let's sum them. And then it says, do you want to summarize each row? Yes, include row sums. I like that. Click Next. And that's it. What name do you want to give it? It's got the crosstab in it, so I know it's a crosstab query, and I'm good with that. Let's just go ahead and click Finish and take a look. And hey, I've got my category and my product. Now, so for Fanny Pack, it's not listed a gazillion times, and so it's grouped into one for the category, and then we got the total sales, which is a summary of, well, nothing in January, but 76 plus 741 gives us 817. Cool. Now, how about all these extra months? If you don't want to see those because it goes over, you can get rid of that just by, well, right-clicking on the tab, going to the Design view. And by the way, up here, the crosstab is an action query, so you don't have to use the crosstab query wizard. You can just go ahead and do it from scratch. Come in here, add your table, select the action crosstab, and then add your fields down below, and then you get your crosstab row where you can choose if you want those fields that you added as a row heading as a column heading the intersecting value, and then there's the total of it all, so that's a row heading. And I prefer using the Crosstab Query, going step by step, or doing it and then coming in here and reverse engineering it and playing with it in design view. But I'm good. Let's come up here in the gray area and right click to go ahead and bring up the properties. And over here in the properties for the entire query, we've got our column headings, which when you right click and you zoom, you can see I just want January, February, and Mar. I don't want anything after that. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. Click Okie dokie and then close out of here. Click on View, and there, that's more concise. And then one last pet peeve, well, the total cells, I'd rather have it come at the end here. So, click on the column header label, selects the entire column, click and then drag that selected column over, and I like it that way. A macro is a collection of actions used to run a set task. And in this example, I want to create a macro that will open up my contact form. I know, you could argue and say, can't you just come over here and double click on it to open it up? Well, in this database design view, you can because you can see the navigation pane. But if you had another design, you won't be able to get to it right readily, and how you want to set it up, maybe a button in a window here, a form that they can click on to open up another form. In any case, that's not the point, at least initially. The point is I want to introduce you to a macro by doing something simplistic. And then in the next couple of training videos, we'll build upon this and do something a bit more challenging. So let's go ahead and close out of here. And to create a macro that will open up my contact form, come up here, click on the Create tab, go to the Macros and Code group, and click on the big Mac. Click on them, and there you go. So to find a list of actions that we can choose from, either click on the drop-down arrow, and there you go. You can go ahead and choose one, and well, adds it. Let's go ahead and remove it. Or you can come in here and just start typing, add, well, there you go, add contact from Outlook. That's an import. In any case, if you don't know anything about Outlook, here's a quick plug. Watch my Outlook training videos. Let me go ahead and hit the escape key. So you can choose your actions from the list here, or over in the Action Catalog task pane, which if you cannot see because it's gone, then you can come up here on the Design tab and click on Action Catalog to appear, deselect it to disappear, reselect it to appear. And you've got your actions that are in groups here, like data import, export. Click on it to expand, and there's the add contact from Outlook. And to add it over here, you can go ahead and double click, it adds it. And then to get rid of it, or you can come over here, click and drag, and then to get rid of it. And you can also come up here and do a search, an instant search, like add, well, there you go, filters. So you can go ahead and double click to add it, and then we'll get rid of it. And let's go ahead and clear our search and collapse that. Now the field that I want to use doesn't appear in the action list. It's one of those extra actions that, well, Microsoft considers unsafe, but yet it still includes it in the all actions. Well, as you can see up here, show all. Let me deselect the action catalog. So these lightning bolts that you see here are actions, and the ones you see over here where it says show all, you see that yellow yield sign? That means of all the actions, it has a total of 70 that are trusted and 20 that aren't. Those that aren't are like, well, untrusted. And so when you show all actions, you're going to be using some that Microsoft doesn't trust. And so by default, Access lists the 70 trusted actions that will run even if the content has not been trusted. In other words, you can set up your Trust Center settings to disable all macros, but it'll still run these macros that only contain the 70 trusted actions. So you may want to check your Trust Center settings, and you can do that by coming up here and clicking on the File tab, going backstage down to Options, and there's Trust Center. Select that, come over here, click on Trust Center Settings, and select your macro setting, and here we go. So even if you have them disabled completely without notification, those 70 trusted actions will still run. But the other 20, like my echo code that I want to use, it won't run unless I allow it to run. So I can disable macros with notification to say, hey, look, your macros aren't going to run. Those that aren't trusted are those actions, as opposed to no notification, it just doesn't run. Or disable all macros except digitally signed macros, which it's not digitally signed. Or enable all, which isn't recommended because it could be dangerous. Well, I'm creating the database, I know what I'm doing, and so I'm safe. But, if you get a database from somebody else, they're like, here, open this, open that up, and, maybe there's somebody you don't trust. That's the whole purpose of it, so it doesn't destroy your computer. Or maybe you do it inadvertently. You're poking around and typing in things and creating macros and who knows. So to keep yourself safe, you may not want to enable them, but I'm going to do it for me because I trust me and I want to be able to run those not trusted action, the echo. Let's go ahead and click Okie dokie. So let's go ahead and enable all. And we can bring up our action catalog again. So come up here, we can type in echo. And again, it's not listed because I don't have all my actions shown. So let's go ahead and delete that. Click on Show All, including the ones that it doesn't trust. But then why would Access put something that it doesn't trust into Access? Well, if you know what you're doing here, you should be fine, like I do. Echo, there, type it in, it finally pulls up. And of course, let me hit the Escape key. You can do it there or come over here as the macro commands. And for something more visual, there you go. Here's one that's not trusted. Here's one that's not trusted. In any case, let's go ahead and double click to add it. Now when I add it, you can hover over it and get the details, and it says it hides or shows the results of a macro while it runs. So to exaggerate, to make a point, if I had like 70 actions down below and I run the macro, do you want to see it execute all those actions, or you just want the end result of all those actions? So if it's on, you'll see it execute. Double click. Let's go ahead and come in here and say no. I don't want to see it execute all the actions, and I'm only going to have like basically one action below that, but hey, I want to introduce it to you. So the next action that I want to add is, go ahead and click in here, OP, there we go, open form. Oh, that's nice. Hit the tab key and we get a few more details. It says, okay, what's the name of the form that you want to open? Well, let me click on the drop down arrow and it's going to be my contact form. And then how do you want to view it? You want it in the form view, design view, print preview. We'll keep it simple, the form view. And then you have extra fields you can cover, like enter a filter to apply. You got a filter name, a where condition, which we'll cover later on, data mode. You can just go ahead and hover over it and read more about it to see what we need to do here and if it's something that you want to use. Other than that, let me go ahead and click off. And now let's learn how to add a comment or comments. Maybe you want to add some explaining what you're doing back here, you know, for somebody else, or maybe in a year you come back and you're like, what in the heck was I doing? So you got some comments to read. Let's go ahead and it's an action. Type in comment. There you go. Hit the tab key, opens up the comment box, and this comment's going to be for the echo, explaining what that does. Hide the results of the macro until it is finished. And then to add another comment, well, you can do it that way. You know, click in here, type in COM, or come over here in the action catalog, and there you go, comment under the program flow. Double click, and it collapses that one so you can see it right there. And let's type this one in for the second action, what that does. Opens up the contact form in form view. Go ahead and click off of it, and if you need to make any changes, click on it and click inside of it. And then you can start typing. I mean, it looks spooky when you click off and you click on it. You're like, where in the heck did it go? Well, you have to click one more time to get inside to see what's in there. Okay, now for me, when I've got comments, I think it's nice if I have the comments just above the section or area, or in this case, action that I'm commenting about. So you can do it one of a couple of ways. You can either go ahead and click on the up arrow and move it up, and then go ahead and click off. It collapses, and there you go, to hide the results of the macro till it's finished, the echo. And then this comment, you can go ahead and click in it, and then over to the right hand side you can click and drag, and you see that red line, wherever that goes and you let go, that's where it ends up, and click off, and nice. And one last thing here is that when you hover over one of these actions, you can go ahead and click on it to collapse it so you just see the name of it and not everything else that's tied to it. You can do it individually and collapse them, or you can come up here on the Design tab in the Collapse and Expand, and you can expand all and collapse all, and that makes it cleaner here. And of course, hover over it to expand it individually. And then finally, we better save our macro, take it for a test drive, make sure it works. Let's come up here and click on Save, and my 3-letter prefix for the macro is MCR, and we'll just say contact form, or opens up the contact form. Whatever works best for you, click Okie dokie, and it adds it over here in the navigation pane where it displays all the access objects. And well, if you can't see it, make sure that you click on the drop down arrow and it's set to all access objects. Of course, you can just focus on the macros, and there you go. But I'll click on the drop down and we'll say all, and then go ahead and close out of here. And then to run it, just double click on it and it will open up the contact form. Double click. Is that the contact form? Wait, FRM contact, FRM contact. Yay, it works. Let's go ahead and close out. But keep in mind that when you want to edit it, you might be thinking old school, like, hey, I open this up to go ahead and get into the datasheet view. Well, when you want to edit the tables, you right click to go to the design, but sometimes I get caught double clicking and going, oh, I need to go to the design. Well, the macro, if you double click on it and it's something you don't intend to have it automatically run, then don't do it. Right click on it and open up in the design, make your tweakages, your changes, and then go ahead and save it and close out so you can run it at a later time, or not trying to run it when you just need to make some design changes. As you recall in the previous training video, we learned how to create a macro, and it's right there. See that when somebody double clicks on it, it opens up the contact form. In this training video, I want to show you how you can create a macro button. So the operative word being a button, meaning that when somebody clicks on it, you can have it execute a macro like this one right here that opens up the contact form. Where do I want to put this button? Well, in a related form like the customer info when I double click to open it up and I'm looking at mountain camping and I'm like, okay, who's the contact person? Customer number is 10, so if I double click and open up the contact form, 10, oh, it's Bob Johnson. So instead of coming over here in the navigation pane, especially if it's hidden, how about if we add a button right here that has the macro assigned to it that when somebody clicks on it, it opens up the contact form? Doesn't that sound nifty? Well, it's a start. Let's go ahead and right click in a blank area, go to the design view, and to add the button to the grid down below, let's come up here on the design tab to the controls group, and there's the quadruple rated X button that, well, before we click on it, you need to know something. Let me click on the more button. That in previous training videos when we created our option group or the combo box, by default the use control wizards was on. You can see it's highlighted, meaning that, well, when I click on one of those commands there, the wizard opens up, again, asks you a bunch of questions based upon your answers. It'll create your option group, help you create that, or your combo box. Well, I don't need any help with this, especially since the wizard doesn't allow me to assign a macro to that button. So you want to deselect it before you click on the button, and then you can go ahead and click and add the button down below into the grid. But if you forget to turn this off by deselecting it and you click on it, and you come down here and you click, it starts the wizard. Just go ahead and click cancel and you've got your button, which is all we really need right now. So with the button here, I don't like the text inside because what does that mean? Let's go ahead and call it our contact or contact form, hit enter. And then to be able to assign the macro here to that button, that when somebody clicks on it, it runs the macro and opens up the contact form. Let's bring up the property sheet by double clicking really fast on the border of the button. And there we go. And then you got the name of the command, and the name is for us in the design view to find it, to work with it. And I don't know what 30 means, so we can just go ahead and delete the suffix and just say it's our contact form. So it opens up the contact form, whatever works for you. Let me hit enter. And then the caption, you can change it here, which will update it within the button. So either do it in the button or over here in the property sheet in the caption field here. And then to assign the macro to the button, come over here and click on the event tab. And there you go. On click, we want the macro my contact to run. That was pretty simplistic. Great. Let's come up here and click on the save button. Right click on the tab, go to the form view and take it for a test drive. So I'm looking at mountain camping and I'm like, okay, you need to find out who the contact is, the customer number 10. Click on contact. It opened it up right to 10 and there's Bob Johnson. Great. Oh, wait a second. I mean, that was great. But let me go ahead and close out of here because if I advance over to let's say record number 3, customer number 20, Mirror Lake Sports, and I'm like, okay, who's the contact person? When I click on contact, will it take me right to number 20 or to the beginning of all the records? Number 10, Bob Johnson. Oh, rats. So I have to come over here and scroll to be able to find 20. Well, what we did here was a great start, but to take it to the next level, you want to watch my next training video on using the where condition. Where, when you're in a record over here, you can have this customer number that when you click on contact, will actually come over here and open up that form and find its match and take you just right to it, number 20 here. Doesn't that sound cool? Go ahead and watch the next training video and I'll show you how cool it is. Continuing on from the previous training video, the problem I was running into when I wanted to look up the contact for a company here, like let's do Mirror Lake Sports. When I clicked on the contact button that ran the macro to open up the contact form, it took me to the first record in that form. It wouldn't match the customer number here with the one in there, so I can go right to it and find out who the contact is for Mirror Lake Sports. So click on it. Doesn't take me to number 20, so I had to navigate until I find it, and there it is. It's Marsha Benson. So what I want to do is I want to modify the macro that's been assigned to the button here to include a where condition, where it compares the record in the current form and finds its matching record in the second form. What is it going to be comparing? The customer number field in this form to the customer number field in the contact form. So when they match up, well, it'll pull me right to that, and I won't have to navigate. To do this, we can edit the macro one of two ways. You can either come over here, since it's right there, and right-click on it, and go right to the design view, or let me close out. If you have a lot of macros and you don't want to scroll through to find it, or the navigation pane's hidden, you can of course right-click in a blank area on your form, go to the design view, and bring up the property sheet for the button here. And so if you don't see the property sheet, then double-click on the border of the button really fast, and go to the Event tab where the on-click, the macro here, with the My Contact macro, let's go ahead and click on its Build button, and it opens up the macro here as well. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead where it says Open the Form to not just only open the form, but let's click in the Where condition here. And you can see when I hover over it, it pops open, explains what the field is for, and gives you an example. But let me go ahead and copy and paste my expression in here, and I'll explain it. And there it is, the customer number. So the customer number has to equal the customer number. But the way it's written is the customer number in the form that we're opening up, that's what this represents, has to go back and match the customer number that we're coming from, or the form that we're coming from, that customer number field there. So the customer number equals, and then because it has to go backward to the form that we just came from, we have to write it that says, okay, go ahead and look in one of the objects. What is the object? It's a form, and then you got the operator, exclamation point, and then the form that you're looking for, or that we want the macro to look for, is the form customer info, the form that we're coming from that has the button that we click on it. Because in that form, there's the operator, another exclamation point, we have the customer number field. And you can see we got square brackets to separate how we're writing expression, the path to the customer number field. So it's got to be a form, and it's got to be the customer number form, and it's got to be the customer number in that form, to where that has got to match what we're opening up into. Now, when it comes to writing your expressions, if you don't get enough space here, you can't right-click on it to zoom in, but if you remember the shortcut keys, Shift F2, that will open up the zoom window and you get more room. So let's go ahead and click Cancel and save this. And let's close out of the macro and right-click on the tab, go to the form view, and take it for a test drive. So let's go ahead and go over one more, like let's do customer number 25, click on contact, and oh my goodness, isn't that just breathtaking? That's great! Now go ahead and try it yourself, open up the corresponding exercise, and see if you can remember how to write the expression, and then if it works and it matches, you're on the right track. The require data entry macro does just that. It requires data to be entered into a field, well, of your choosing, like let's say the customer name. When somebody adds a new customer, I don't want them to forget to put in the customer name. So when they try to save it without the name there, I can cancel the event so it doesn't save it until they actually type in a name. So to do this, let's go ahead and right-click in a blank area of the form, go to the design view, and we're going to be creating a macro in the form known as an embedded macro. Instead of having it out here out of bed, it's going to be in bed, proprietary to this form so nobody else can use it, but just, again, this form only. So to bring up the property sheet where we can embed the macro, let's go ahead and double click in a blank area. It's got to be the property sheet with the selection type for the form. And we want to come down here to the Event tab and where it says Before Update. So before somebody saves the record and updates it with the changes or the new record, it's going to check the macro to make sure, in this example, that we actually have a name in the customer name field. So let's go ahead and click on the Build button to select the macro builder and click Okie dokie. And there we go. The first thing I want to do is to add a comment to this macro. So if somebody else working in the database wants to know what I'm doing here, let's go ahead and let them know. Type in CO, there we go, comment, hit the tab key, and it's going to be to require data entry in the customer name field. So that's the overall comment of what we're going to be accomplishing here. And let's add another comment for the first action, which is, let me come in here and type in another comment. If customer name is left blank, do not save the record. So that's going to be the comment for the next action, the operative word being if. So let's come down below out of this comment. Well, I can click off, and we got our two comments, the overall comment, and then for the first action comment, let's come and click in here and type in if, hit the tab key, and we want to do an if then. So the first thing is if what? Well, if the, start typing, there we go, customer name, and you can see we've got a couple of them. One's labeled, one's the text box, but if you don't have them labeled correctly, that's okay because there's a pop-up that lets you know what it is, and we want the text box, and you can use the down arrow key, go to the next one if they have the same name and go, oh, that one's the label, don't want that one, want the text box. So with that highlighted, hit the tab key and it pops it open, puts it in the square brackets, and then we want to see if the customer name is null or is empty. So if it is, then the next action is cancel the event. And there you go, cancel event, which means don't save the record. Hit the tab key, and there you go. So after it cancels the event, like if you got 20 fields or 50 fields, and they're in field 49 or something, in any case, what we can do is we can use the go-to control that will take them from that last field and put them right back into that field where the data is required to be entered. I mean, to help them out, so they don't have to, scroll over and click in that field. So let's go ahead and do, well, let's do a comment here. Let them know what we're doing here for the next action. Comment, hit the tab key. Go to the customer name field. Great. Let's go ahead and click the action, get out of that comment, and let's type in go. There we go, go to control. Hit the tab key and it says, okay, what's the name of the control? It's going to be the cuss. Type in the first couple letters, customer name, text box, hit the tab key. Great. So we've got the overall comment, the comment for the first action. If the customer name is left blank, don't save the record, or in code terms, cancel the event. Don't update it, don't accept changes or the new record. And then when it does that, it's going to go to the customer name field, the go-to control, our go-to guy. And so let's come up here, click save, and take it for a test drive, and close out of the macro. And it's an embedded macro because it says so here, see. And then let's come up here and save our form. Close out of the property sheet. In any case, right click and go to the form view and take it for a test drive. So when I come down here and create a new record, let's type in a customer number 133, hit the tab key. Oops, I skipped the customer name and I'm typing in an address. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. Let me go ahead and save it. Now my cursor's flashing here, right? So when I hold down the shift key and hit enter to save it, it doesn't save it, and it takes the cursor to the customer name field. And I'm like, oh, this is haunted, or this thing's freaking out on me. Why is it doing that? I don't want to enter in a customer name. Or maybe if they figured it out, they're like, oops, I forgot. In any case, it's doing its job. It's canceling the event. It's not accepting any changes or saves until I go ahead and type in a customer name. Now, for front-end users, that may not be helpful if this is the first experience with your database and you're like, this thing's freaking out on me. Instead, we can add a message to our macro that when it cancels the event and takes them back to that field, we can have a pop-up that says, hey man, what do you think you're doing? You got to enter in a customer name, so please do so. Just like that. So go ahead and watch the next training video to learn about how to add a message to our macro. As a continuation of the previous training video, when you assign a required data entry macro, as we did to the customer name field, it's probably a good idea to have a message pop up letting the front-end user know what's required, as in they must enter something into the customer name field. So to go ahead and add a message, let's update our embedded macro by right-clicking in a blank area, going to the design view, and bring up the property sheet for the entire form, so double-click off in the gray area. And there it is for the entire form. On the Event tab, there's our embedded macro, so we need to update it by clicking on its Build button. There we go. So what we need to do is we need to add another action to our if statement or expression. So you can go ahead and click anywhere there, around there, within its expression here. So there's the if and then the extra actions, sub-actions to that. And the other sub-action we want to add is the message, there we go, message box. After you type in the first couple letters, you see message box, hit the tab key, and here we go. First of all, what's the message? Let's say, we're watching you. You must enter a value in the customer name field. And then do you want it to beep? Oh, sounds are always nice if they have their speakers turned up. And then the type, Well, we can click on the drop-down arrow and say, ooh, this is critical. Or is this a warning? You may never know. Let's go ahead and do something critical. And then the title for the window that pops up with the message. As you see here, here's the window and there's the title of the window. So you can say something like, data validation. We're validating that you have data within that field. Well, whatever works best for you. Sound good? Okie dokie. Let's come up here, click on the Save button, and close out of the macro. And it's embedded. So let's go ahead and click Save to accept that inner form. Click on the View button, and let's take it for a test drive. And in fact, we don't have to create a new record for this to be applicable. Just like if I come in this record and I delete mountain camping, and then I try to save it, hold down the Shift key, hit Enter. There we go, data validation, the title of the window, and it's critical. We're watching you. You have to enter a value in the customer name field. Ooh, that's spooky. They're watching me. Well, it works. Great. We can go ahead and click Okie dokie, type in a name, or just hit the Escape key to get out of the edit mode. And that way, if we did an accidental deletion, we don't have to recall what the name was. Again, just hit the Escape key. The Automate macro is a macro you can assign to a field that will check that field for a value and automatically update the value in another field based upon the value in the first field. Okay, let me break that down. I'm looking at the city and state fields. If I assign the Automate macro to the city field, it'll check to see if certain cities, like let's say Sandy or Salt Lake, if it sees those, it'll automatically go to the state field and update it with the correct state, Utah, because both those cities are within the state of Utah, thereby making my data entry much more efficient. So to go ahead and do this, because it sounds super fun, let's right-click in a blank area, go to the Design View, and it's going to be based upon the city, so let's select the city text box to add an embedded macro, the Automate macro, to that. And so once we have it selected, double-click on the border of it, so we can bring up the property sheet for that text box, and then go to the Event tab, and let's come down here on Exit. So after somebody types in something, tabs out of it, when they exit out of the city field, it'll check the work, and if it finds Sandy or Salt Lake, it'll automatically add Utah to the state field. So let's come over here, click on the Build button. There's the macro builder, and click Okie dokie. First thing I want to do is add a comment. So type in COM, and there we go, hit the Tab key, and let's explain what we're doing here. Okay, enter a value in state based upon the value in city. Sound good? Okay, let's go ahead and add a new action, and this one's going to be if. Hit the Tab key because if, and we want to type in city. There we go. City right there. There's the text box. Let's arrow down one. It says it's a text box. Hit the Tab key to pop it open. If city, and then we want a space, type in IN for in, space, open parentheses, and then open set of quotes, Sandy, close quotes, comma, open quotes, Salt Lake, close quotes. You can do a comma and just continue to add, well, all the cities you want, but I'm going to keep it simple and just do 2. So I'll just close that off, end the parentheses there. And so remember, it's if, so if city has either Sandy or Salt Lake, then what? What's the next action? So go ahead and click down below. We want to say to set. Okay, it's not pulling up set value. Why? Because it's one of those actions that Access is like, okay, it's a risky action. Well, it's not risky because I know what I'm doing. So let's go ahead and click on Show All Actions to bring in that action, set value. So let me hit the backspace key, delete that, try it again, SETV, there we go, set value. Hit the Tab key, then it says, okay, choose the item that you want to set the value for, and the item is going to be STA, there we go, state. So in the text box state, it's highlighted, hit the Tab key, puts in square brackets, we want to set that item to, the expression is going to be open quotes, Utah, okay, abbreviated, UT, open close quotes, and then UT in those quotes. And then let's go ahead and add a comment to say that, because maybe it's a good practice to get into to explain to anybody else who comes back in this macro what's going on here. So if city is Salt Lake or Sandy, set state to Utah. Let's go ahead and click off. And it's probably best to go ahead and move this up just above here and then click off. So we have the overall purpose, the comment here of our actions, and then for the first action, if city is Salt Lake or Sandy, set it to Utah. And then wouldn't it be nice if this condition is met and it sets the state to Utah to actually have it go to the next control for them and not sit in Utah so they don't have to hit the Tab key to get out of there? I mean, just one extra step, save them an extra hit on the keyboard. We can do that by using the go to control, right? So let's come in here and do go, there we go, go to control. So it's the postal code, POS, there we go. The text box, it's highlighted, hit the tab key, cool. And then of course you can add a comment here to explain that. That says, go to the postal code field. And I like my comments just before the actions and click off, so it's like the title of what you're seeing down below. And does everything look grisly? Okay, be sure to save your work. Let's take it for a test drive. Let's go ahead and close out. And then be sure to save our form here, and then right click, go to the form view, and let's try it. So either creating a new record, or I'm in another record and making an update, it'll apply to either or. So for the city, if I go ahead and delete that and I type in, down below it's got the state, Connecticut, CT. If I type in Salt Lake, hit the tab key. Oh my goodness, did you see that? That's so fabulous. It converted it to UT and took me right to the postal code. Does it work for Sandy? Well, Sandy, hit the tab key, of course, because, well, Utah's already there. You didn't see the change because, in essence, there wasn't anything to change, but it did, Utah, and took me right to the postal code. And then hold down the Shift key, hit Enter to save our work. The conditional formatting feature allows you to apply a format to a text box based upon a condition that you set. And in this example, I want to be able to apply the format color, like let's do red, to any price that's less than or equal to $25. So it's a flag to the front-end user, a reminder that we need to add shipping charges to those purchases that, again, $25 or less. So to do that, let's go ahead and right-click in a blank area, go to the Design view, and you can see this rectangle here is a form. So we've got a subform here, a form within a form. And we want to select the price each field, so click on it. And because it's in a subform, it first selects the subform and then click on it again, and you're able to select the price each field. Then come up here and click on the Format tab, go to the Control Formatting group and click on Conditional Formatting. And show formatting rules for price, and there's the other fields within that subform. Let's do price and click on New Rule. And then down below, the field value is, well, it's not between, it's got to be less than or equal to, and we'll type in 25. And if it meets that condition, let's set some formats, make it bold, and well, let's do the format color, maybe something purple. Oh, if that's black text, we better go white to make it pop and not blend so furiously there. And let's do white. There we go. Okay. And then click Okie dokie, click OK. Let's take it for a test drive. Right click on the tab, go to the form view, and hey, is that less than or equal to $25? It's a flag. Okay, shipping charges. Let's go ahead and go to the next record. Nothing there, nothing there, nothing there. Oh, there it is again. Great. Now, in addition to that, if you want to flag the entire record, I can show you how you can write an expression that says, okay, go ahead and take a look at this field, and if it's less than or equal to $25, then apply the same formatting to this field, or if you can remember the formatting, go ahead and choose that and apply it to here and also there. I'll just do it to the product because once you learn how to do it to that, you can do it to the other fields. It's the same pattern. So let's go ahead and right click in a blank area, go to the design view, and let's click on it once, click on it again to choose the product, and then come back up here, click on the Format tab, and then click on Conditional Formatting, and click on New Rule. Now the field value is, well, there's no value or numbers in this field. So that can't work. Instead, we're going to write an expression that says go out and take a look at the other field. So let's click in here, Control V as in Victor to paste it, and let me break it down. So because we're not basing this upon the current field but another field, we have to tell Access to search the objects. And what are the objects we're looking for? Well, it's a form. Then we got the operator, exclamation point, that says, okay, after you look in the object forms, then within that, we're looking for the categories form. Then we separate that by an exclamation point. And then within that form is a subform. And then within the subform is the price each field that has to be less than or equal to 25. If it meets that condition, well, if you can remember the formats, it was bold. I got that. And then, well, you can make it different if you don't want it to be the same. Make it something a little bit lighter. And click on the drop down arrow. Maybe we'll do red this time. That's too much. How about if we do white? Something more subtle. In any case, it's your flavor. You choose what works best for you. Let's click Okie dokie. Click OK again, and then right-click on the tab and go to the Form View, and there you go. So if I chose the same colors, it would be formatted, well, not entirely across all fields, but you can apply the same expression to the product ID field. That looks at the price, and if it's greater than or less than $25, then format that as well. And let's go ahead and go backwards. And it's there too. And then if you're done, you want to get rid of it, well, just go ahead and right-click in a blank area, go to the Design View, and let's go back into our subform here and choose one of the fields. Come back up, click on the Format tab, Conditional Formatting, and there's for the price. We can delete that rule, and let's go ahead and flip that because we also have the product. And it says, okay, switching fields will lose rule changes that have not been applied, like when we're deleting it. Because I didn't apply it, well, let's go ahead and continue and apply the changes and delete this one as well and click OK. And then right-click on the tab, go to the Form View, and we're back to where we started. We're colorless. What you're looking at here is my category sales report. I've got my products grouped by categories. As you can see, there's the category for these products, the category for that one, and so on. And what I want to do is I want to insert a chart at the end of the report that has the totals for each category, something as simple as a pie chart. Now to insert a chart, I need a query or table of data I can base this chart upon. And I do is my categories query. Double click, all my categories and the total for each category. So I can insert a chart into my report based upon the data contained herein. So I can print this off for my coworkers and they can see graphically how each category is doing. Let me go ahead and close out of here, and to do this, to insert the chart, let's right-click in a blank area, go to the Design View, and then come up here on the Design tab, go to the Controls group, click on Controls, and we're looking for the Chart Controls. There it is, click on it. And because I want it at the end of the report, let's go down into the Report footer, find a little spot there in the grid, click on it, opens up the Chart Wizard. It's going to ask us a bunch of questions. Based upon our answers, we're going to get our pie chart. So first off, which table or query contains the data to build a chart on? And it's going to be, well, it's got queries selected. It's going to be the categories. Double click on that. Selects it, automatically advances to the next step in the wizard. And which fields contain the data that you want for the chart? Both. So we'll include both. Click Next. And we want pie. We'll select that, click Next. And you can get a preview of the chart. Click on it. And so you've got the legend here, the categories, and then the slices represent the total sales, or you can flip that, click Close. As it says here, you can drag and drop field buttons to make a change. So instead of the category as a legend, you can have the total sales, drag it up there, and then flip that, click on Preview. I don't like that. Let me click Close and go back to category for the legend here and the totals that represent each slice. And click Next. Now if you want the chart to change from record to record, well, I wouldn't insert it at the end of the report because it's not changing. The only place it would change is, well, in the category footer, at the end of each category, before it goes to the next category, the change, well, then I could go ahead and say, okay, let's select the fields that link the document and the chart, and that would be the category. And when it goes from one category to the next, you'll be able to change that from one record to the next. So I don't want to put it there. I just want it, again, at the end of the report. So I can come up here and say, no, we're not switching around. I want to see everything and not based upon each record, which, again, wouldn't work because it's not changing in the footer. It's at the end of the report. It would only change in the category footer. So let's go ahead and choose nothing and click Next. And then that's it. Click Finish. And there we go. Let's take it for a test drive. Let's see what it looks like. Right-click on the tab. Go to, let's do the Report View. And scroll down to the end. And it's not showing up in the report view, but will it in the print preview? Let's right click and go to the print preview and go to the end of the report and click, and there we go. So you want to do that because what you see in the print preview is what's going to be coming out of your printer. The report view just gave us east and west, and what's that? And speaking of which, it looks a little bit squishy and I don't like the title of it. If you want to do some tweakage, let's right click, go to the Design View and scroll down, and let's hover over one of the left middle resizing handle and click and drag that out just a bit, give it some more room. Click and drag the grid out and click and drag that. And then to get rid of the title or to rename it, you can go ahead and double click on it, and it opens up, well, you get the spreadsheet here where you can make changes within the spreadsheet that is tied to the chart here, but I'm not going to do that. Let me close out, and if you're like, wait a second, I want to do that, and you just closed out of it, to bring it back up, you can right click on the chart and open the data sheet again. There you go. Let me close out. And speaking of which, when you right click on the chart, you can change the chart type to something else like maybe donut. Sounds better than a pie right now. Let me click cancel, and you got your other options. But I want to change the title here, so let's go ahead and click in it, and you can get rid of the Q tote and just call it categories, or categories total, whatever works, then click off. And then it resets it, and then we can go ahead and right click on the tab, go to the print preview, and then go to the end of the report, and there you go. Maybe I want to give it more space, but hey, looks a lot better. I've got my phone list query up where I have my employee's last name, first name, and their phone extension. And instead of printing it off as is, I want to create a report based upon this query because I can organize my report. And I'm thinking of it in one of two ways. One is that if I print this off as is, you can imagine if you had hundreds to thousands of employees, it would print this query off on the left-hand side of each page, wasting all the space over in the middle and the right-hand side of every page. However, in reports, I can set up columns, like 2 columns because I don't have that much data here. So when it goes down to the bottom of page 1, instead of continuing on to the top of page 2 and wasting all that space, I could say, wait a second, come up here into the second column on page 1. And then second of all, I can group these employees by the first letter of their last name and have a label for each group like, A in bold or red, and then have all the employees whose first letter in their last name begins with A grouped under that label, and then B, C's, and so on. Sound nifty? Of course it does. Let's go ahead and close out and come up here, click on the Create tab so we can create a report by design. Click on Report Design. And then we need to bring up the property sheet for the entire report, so we can just come over here in the gray area, double click really fast. There's the property sheet. On the Alt tab in the record source, we're looking for our phone list query, so let's click on the drop down arrow and say the source of the records for this report is the phone list. Great, let's go ahead and close out of that. Now let's add a title for our report here. So let me click and drag up at the top of the detail bar and move it down. So I got some spacage here. Then on the Design tab in the Controls group, let's add our label control. Click on that, and then click and drag it, yay big, and then go ahead and type in the name of your report. And then hit Enter, and that's kind of tiny, so let's do some formattage. Come up here, click on the Format tab, and we'll change the font type to Mono, something very fancy, Monotype Corsiva, hit Enter, and we got to make it bigger than that, so click on the drop-down arrow, 28. Oh, it's getting there. I mean, we're big, bad, bold, and beautiful. Okay, and then how about the color? Well, it's Dreamforce. We go with the blue theme here, so something blue. It's getting better. Let me hover over the right middle resizing handle until I can see arrows pointing in opposite directions. Click and drag, and then double click really fast to do a best fit. Then hover over the border and click and drag it. I think right there is pretty good. Next, I want to be able to add the first name and last name of the employees, but remember, in the phone list, it has them separated. So instead of adding 2 fields like the last name and then their first name field, I can go ahead and do a custom field where it combines their last name and puts a comma and then their first name. Let me show you. Let's come up here, click on the Design tab, go to the Controls group, click on Controls, do the AB text box thing, click to add it. Let's get rid of the label. And then the unbound text box, click and drag that. We'll put that in the upper left-hand corner here, and then we'll add an expression. Let's go ahead and double-click on it to bring up the property sheet, and come over here on the Alt tab in the Control source, and you can either type it in or click on the Build button to build the expression, whatever works best for you. In fact, let me just right-click and zoom in, and you can type it in there. But what I like doing is I like typing it in the Control source or in the Build, because when I do that, Access helps me out. For example, when I come in here, hit the equals, and I do last, and it starts bringing up, well, let me hit the backspace, the different options that I can choose from, the least of which is the actual last name field. So since it's there, if I just arrow down and hit the tab key, then it automatically puts it in for me. but I don't have that option. Let me hit the backspace key. When I right click and zoom in on it, I have to just type it out. I don't get the little prompts. And of course you also get it when you click on the build button. When you type in equals last, see, it prompts. So you can go ahead and double click on that to add it, or arrow down to select it and hit the tab key. In any case, last, since we're here, let's do ampersand and then open quotes, comma, space, close quotes, ampersand, and then do open square bracket. Well, actually, you don't have to do that. You can just type in first, because let me arrow down. I'm going to find the first name field that's right there, hit the tab key, and it adds square brackets for me. So this is what it's doing. It's doing what's called a concatenate, where it's going to be combining the last name and the first name together. That's what the ampersands do. So last name, then after that the ampersand, so I can combine it with the first name, and it's got the ampersand before that, but in between it, because I don't want them squished and slammed right together, I've got a comma separating them, not just a comma in between the quotes, but a comma space. So it's not last comma first, it's last comma space first. Let's go ahead and click okie dokie and hit the enter key, and then let's see what it looks like. In fact, before I go ahead and go to the print preview, we may want to go ahead and close up this space, because if I go right now, right click to print preview, well, there's max, but then I have to scroll all the way down because I have all that gap before I hit the next record. Oh, great. That's quite the gappage. And that ain't working for me. So let's right click, go to the design view, and collapse this by hovering over the page footer bar, the top of it, until I can see arrows pointing up and down, and click and drag it up until we get super squished up there. Well, maybe not too close just yet, because I want to be able to add their extension. So if I come up here on the Design tab to the Tools group and click on Add Existing Fields, we got our extension, right? Double click. Okay, see, just messed it up for me. But that's all right. Let's go ahead and click and drag that up here and click on the label. You can keep it, but I'm going to delete it. And click and drag and move the extension and put it right about there. And then drag the top of the page footer so it's snug, so it doesn't have that much to go. So when it goes from one record to the next, it doesn't have this big gappage here. So when I right click and go to the print preview, they're all one right next to the other. So I don't have to, this is on page 1 Max, page 2 is Harry, page 3 is Sherry. I mean, if it works for you, hey, that's just the way you roll. So for me, it doesn't. Let's go ahead and right click, go back to the design view, and do a little bit more work here. Where next, I want to go ahead and group these together by the first letter of their last name. So all the A's are together, the B's, the C's. And to do that, let's come up here on the Design tab to the Grouping and Totals group and click on Group and Sort, and then come down here and click on Add a Group. Now, I want to group it by the first letter of their last name, not just, well, their last name here. So what I can do is I can come down here and click on Expression, and here's what I'm going to write. Equals left, and it's going to be the left function, so not the left name, but you see the fx, there's left function, arrow down, and it says returns a variant of type string containing a specified number of characters from the left side of a string. And that string is going to be a field, and it's going to be the last name field. And it's going to return a number that we specify from the left-hand side, which is going to be the first character of the last name, and if it's Appleman, it's going to be the letter A. So you can learn more about my functions. We cover the left function in my Excel training video, and a lot of other functions that work with the left function, also the right function. In any case, watch the training videos there if you want to learn more about functions. I'm just hitting a few to kind of help us along with access here, and in this case, our report. So with it highlighted, hit the Tab key. Then it says, okay, what's the string? Well, the string that we're looking at is going to be the field, last name. So type in LAS, and there it is. With it highlighted, hit the Tab key, and it puts square brackets around it. So that's the last name field. And then you can see in the syntax, string, and then the length. Comma, the length is now in bold. So we'll type in 1 because we want to pull in the first letter, the length of that field, the first letter, just one character, which is going to start over on the left-hand side, hence the left function. So the first letter in the last name, go ahead and close the parentheses, and that's it. And then what I want to do is I want to go ahead and copy that, and I'll explain why in just a minute because I don't want to retype it. In any case, let's go ahead and click okie dokie. Now we've got our group field here that it's going to group everybody's last name by the first letter in their last name. And let's come up here and see if it works. Right click, go to the print preview, and hey, A is for Apple, and B is for Bailey, in any case. We got them all grouped together, A, B, C's, and so on, which is nice, but hey, how about if we do something a little bit more fanciful? How about if we add like a header for each of these groups, like if it's for the A's, a big A here, and a B for the B's, and so on. Okay, you convinced me. Let's go ahead and right-click, go to the design view. And what we need to do is add a text box here because that's what it's grouping by, where we can say, hey, go ahead and pull the first letter of the last name that will represent that group. So you kind of see where I'm going with copying that function. Well, let's come up here in the controls and go with our text box and click here, delete the label. There's our unbound. Let's squish it over here. I don't know, actually let's squish it down here and drag the top of the detail section and bring this down below. So we'll have all the spacing before it hits the next group. Otherwise, if I made it super tight, you just have the letter here, then the record, then the next group with its letter, then the record, but I want a little bit of before space of each group. So with it unbound, we want to bring up the property sheet for it, or you can just come in here and just type in the function, but we pasted it, so let's do Control V as in Victor to paste it. So it's going to pull in the first letter of the last name beginning over on the left-hand side. That's the whole expression right there. Let's go ahead and hit enter on the keyboard and see if it works. Right-click on the tab, go to the print preview. Hey, looky there. There's A for apple and B's for the B's and C's and so on. Now let's see. Let's click on it to zoom out. How many pages do I have? Because it's on the left-hand side, and when it gets down to the bottom, let's go ahead and click and go over, and it goes on to the second page, and I'm wasting all this space over in the middle and the right-hand side. Well, I don't have that much to take up the third column here, but just enough to get into the second column. So what I want to do, and not only that, but look at that. The S is being cut off, and then the rest of the group underneath the S is on the next page. Let's do a couple of things. Let's right-click and go to the design view, and let's expand by clicking on More for the group. And it says, do not keep group together on one page. Yes, let's go ahead and keep the whole group together on one page. So it doesn't break them up at the bottom, where we get a widow or an orphan, depending upon if you're looking at the bottom of the page or the top of the next. So let's go ahead and right-click, and I cover that in my word training videos, the widow or orphan definitions. But let's go ahead and go to the print preview. So down at the bottom of page 1, I don't know if you saw it, but the S, the label, was able to squeeze there, but not the rest of the record. So instead, keeping the groups together, click on it to zoom out, click on it to zoom up at the top. There we go. Now I put the label up at the top because it's got to keep everybody together because they're a family. But long story short, an orphan is when you have the first line of a paragraph, that's in Word, at the bottom of a page, and everybody else is at the top of the next. That's an orphan. Where a widow is just the opposite, where you have everybody else at the bottom of one page, and on the next page up at the top you just have one. And that's a widow. And so in this case we had an orphan, just the S that was by itself at the bottom of the first page, and the rest of the group was at the top of the next. So now that that's fixed, let's stay in here in the print preview, because on the page layout tab we can go to the page setup, and let's go to the columns here because right now we just got one. So let's go ahead and do 3. And let's see, hit the tab key, column spacing in between the columns here. We're only going to have 2. I know I put 3, but I only have enough data to put in 2. But nonetheless, I'm showing you that you can put as many columns as you want. Just make sure it all fits. And then down below, the column size, the width is defaulted to 6. Oh, that's too huge. So in order to change it, I have to uncheck same as detail. And then I can go ahead and say 2 inches. Because I think that's about the size of these guys right here, about 2 inches. And if I need to, I can tweak it. And then how do I want the column layout? Well, it's got to be down and then across and then down, then across and down. So that looks good. Click okie dokie, and then, hey, there we go. How many pages do I have? Can't click over, so it's all in one page. So instead of going to the top of the next page, the S and W groups, it's now in the second column. And if I need to, I can give it more column spacing in between the columns to kind of give them some more elbow room. And then finally, aesthetically, it doesn't look all that great, right? Because we've got these lines around these boxes. We have these alternating row colors. Oh, it's just such a mess. Let's go ahead and right-click, go to the design view. Well, I'm fussed. And let's go ahead and close out of here. Yeah, we can close out of that. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and hold down the control key and click on all the other boxes here, because then we can come up and click on the Format tab and save for the outline. For me, I want to make it transparent. So when I right click and go to the print preview, okay, looking better, but the alternating row colors kind of especially when you got this other column. It kind of throws me off. So let's get rid of that. Not only for the details, the records, but also for the group, header, the labels. Right click, go to the design view. So to do that, we just need to bring up the property sheet for, first of all, the details. Double click on the bar there really quick. Then come over here on the Alt tab, and let's change the alternate back color. Click in that box there, click on the build button, and say no color. And then we want to do it, or I do, for the group here. And let's come over here and click on that to make that no color. And if I'm talking too softly, it's because I carry a big stick. Let's go ahead and right click and go to the print preview. Hey, it's getting better, isn't it? Cool. Now let's go ahead and make these a little bit more stand outish, the labels for each group, and right click, go to the design view and go ahead and select the box, come up here, click on the format tab, make it bold and beautiful and maybe red. Really give it some poppage and maybe increase the font size. And let's try it now. Right click, go to the print preview. Not too bad. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.